Today, Marty Snye is going to be talking about blacksmithing. Go
Oh,
ahead.
welcome. I had no idea what to expect, who to expect, or how many to expect. So I guess I should have prepared. As you said, my name's Marty Snye. I've been interested in this for quite a number of years, and interested in really 18th century iron. So Civil War period, when they asked me to do this, I'm going, oh boy, you know, you guys are the experts on the Civil War period. I'm far from it. And usually, when all you folks get together, I don't know, you're talking about different battles and different generals and who did what and where they messed up and all of that stuff. And I'm really interested in the history, but my focus and my interests are more in the day-to-day life of folks and certainly the craftspeople of the day. So whether it be woodworking, blacksmithing, tinsmithing, whatever the case may be, those are all very interesting aspects to me. Both the tools, the techniques, the technology that they used of the day, and the products. I think, you know, just looking at some of this great stuff that Carl brought, I find great beauty in it. I know I've been told I've been weird before, so, but the style, the proportions, all of these things are pretty amazing. And when you look at something and then you say, man, how did they do that? How did they get this, you know, these things given the technology of the day? Early, obviously, all hand done. Certainly on the tin side of it, which we'll talk about after we get done here, there was a progression. Initially, everything was done pretty much by hand over stakes and mandrels to shape the tin, much the same as a blacksmith would use his anvil and his hammer to shape whatever object that he's trying to do. So it's what I'm going to try to do, at least with the tinsmithing side, is to show the progression of, obviously, when you got into the Industrial Revolution, we started seeing all kinds of mechanization, tools to enhance production for both the war effort and an increased population. So, you know, all of these things progressed, and to meet the needs of the day, whether it be civilian or military. We'll talk a little bit about some of the makers of the tin tools out there, and it was kind of interesting. I was doing some reading about some of these manufacturers, and as I think a lot of things happen, the Civil War was very good for some industry, and it bankrupted others. And then we saw a combination of forces, different manufacturers, different names. Instead of being in competition with one another, they started joining forces, and you know, we'll see a little bit of that. So again, I didn't know what to expect as far as, you know, what would be relevant to the Civil War era. And we only had an hour or so. So, you know, it's not a lot of time. So what I did is just decided, well, what was really common, what was necessary, what was practically done. And what I'm going to do is we're going to just make some chain links, okay? These are forge welded chain links. Obviously, the manufacturing of chain as we know it now wasn't around, because of now everything is electrically welded together and machine bent and everything else. where all the way from the beginning, all the way up through to probably the 20th century, everything was done by hand. Another common thing that would be done both for the civilian aspect and the military aspect are hame hooks, okay? Familiar with this object?
It looks like part of a harness.
It is. It goes on the single tree, and the hame on the horse, it comes down, the chains on the end, hook into this, and this is the connection between your rolling stock and the harness of the horse. Okay? So it's again, what's really cool about this stuff is form followed function. It wasn't just, you know, to make it pretty so much as it had to serve a purpose, and if it didn't work, it was useless. Nobody wanted it. So on something like this, when that chain comes down, well, this is probably too big, but there again, it hooks in, okay, so you're tied to the horse, and also this point is down almost midway here, so it doesn't drop out. So if you're going, say, down a hill, and the wagon's moving, and the horses aren't quite moving as fast as the wagon, obviously you don't want to become unhitched, okay? So you need that, that security there. So these were made pretty much daily, both in the rural areas as well as the more larger metropolitan areas supply the need for the transportation industry. Chain links obviously were used rural and civilian use.
And military.
And military for sure. You guys can tell me better about, but I believe that a blacksmith was assigned to pretty much all artillery units in the field. And their purpose was not so much making new as repairing, okay? So they would be bringing in new stuff, but obviously chains would break. These single tree hooks, you look at them and you say, man, oh man, how can you wear these things out? But we have a large Amish population around here, and it is incredible how these things will wear in here or wear up here. I mean, they wear them down, you know, the Amish, they'll wear them down until there's nothing left to wear. But yeah, I mean, there's constantly wear on both surfaces, so it doesn't take a really long time to wear these things out, so they have to be replaced. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start just with a basic chain link. We'll do a little forge weld, hopefully, and see if we can make it work. What we're dealing with today is mild steel as a material versus wrought iron that would have been prevalent right from early days up through certainly the Civil War up into the 20th century. 40s, 30s, 40s, old bridges, water towers, things like that were still made out of wrought iron. The bridge down in Ogdensburg across the Assagachy that they just tore down a year or two ago, I had a couple pieces of that. My hope is if the fort ever gets built, it would be nice to make some hinges or at least some artifact for the fort off of that material that came off of that bridge. So I do have that out ordered away in the barn. And you know, as we all know, both, you know, civilians and military were the first people that were recycling things. I mean, they used, reused, and when it was done, they'd make it into something else. It's great to see on the old farms how they, you know, you might come up to a door and you see part of a horseshoe or something made it reforged into a latch or something just to get the job done. So we are, you know, we're perpetuating that type of thing. But here's a piece of wrought iron Wrought iron has a characteristic grain to it, much like wood has. Okay, so we'll pass this around, and you can see what that's like. And this is a bloom. This is actual iron from the bloomery. It's pure iron, so it has really, the difference between iron and steel is the amount of carbon that it has in it. Okay, so steel, even mild steel, what we use today is all mild steel. It has a low carbon content, but it has carbon in it, okay? Where wrought iron has really very, very little carbon in it.
Would they get that carbon from charcoal?
They would, yeah,
That's why they were charcoal makers?
right.
Okay.
Well, they use charcoal to smelt the ore, okay? So the process would be is, and I tried to find it, and I couldn't lay my hands on it, but Steve Mankowski from Colonial Williamsburg he's from Utica originally, and he sent me a newspaper clipping that he found back from the early 1800s, and they talked about raw sea, they were advertising raw sea wrought iron, and they claiming it's the best wrought iron that you could possibly find. So all of this area, both up where you are, Carl, up to Brazier, certainly over in Governor area, in that area, I mean, you know, tons and tons and tons of ore was produced out of those, or dug out of those areas, smelted down into ingots. So when it comes out of the bloomery, this is what it looks like, and it would be still put in the forge, and they would basically make just an ingot out of it, okay? So dimensional stock that were common today, that I can get stock pretty much in any size I want. If I want half-inch square or half-inch round or whatever, just order it up. But in the day, and even during Civil War time, you had to pretty much rework everything to get the dimension that you needed to start with. So, you know, this is kind of cool, if you're into that kind of stuff. And so that's the difference between wrought iron and mild steel. And people, you know, everything's wrought iron. Well, it's not, hasn't been made since, well, early 1900s. The only way we can get it now is from salvage. So you guys, you know, us crazy guys that are interested in that stuff, we see about a bridge coming down or something, and you guys keep your ears and eyes open. Like the old county bridges that were made like before, usually 1930s or around that area of time, pretty much guaranteed that all is raw iron. And the other nice aspect of it is I've got some, I don't know where I put them, but there was some pins that were taken out of St. Mark's River down by Acco. The tank farms down there had a big dock where the tankers would come in. And a few years ago, Frank Richardson was down there, and they had to, apparently all the rest of the people down there that had docks and cottages and stuff, basically were putting in an uproar about those old docks being still extended out there. So they were out there trying to pull all that stuff out. Beautiful, beautiful southern yellow pine wood that was like 40 feet long, incredible. And we picked up a lot of wrought iron, and I've used it, and it's beautiful to work with. It was very high quality wrought iron, and wrought iron came in different grades. The more you worked it, which means the more you hammered it, and just like kneading bread, okay, you would forge it out, fold it over, forge weld it together, and keep doing that. It drove the slag scales out, and it made a better product. So this stuff was triple refined wrought iron. The other nice thing about wrought iron is it doesn't rust near to the degree that mild steel does.
Why not? Marty?
Because of the silica in it, mostly. but it'll weather much, much better. But you have to work it differently. And the reason that, say, this strap hinge, now when I reproduce something, we always wrap the eye and it's welded on the back, so it's what we call a wrapped eye, all right? The reason that was so is because iron has a grain to it, as you can see in that bar, okay? And so anybody that's ever worked wood knows that when you get to the end of a piece of wood and you try to put a nail in it, what's happening? It splits. Wrought iron will split just like wood. It'll split. The nice thing about it is you can usually get up to a welding temperature, flux it, and sometimes weld it back together, and save it. But because of the way the grain is oriented in this, the only way you can get the strength that you needed was to wrap. So if the grain's going this way, if we tried to punch through it, it's just going to blow apart. So by wrapping it around and welding it to itself, we've eliminated that problem of splitting, plus added strength to it. So that's why most of these old strap hinges were welded. With today's mild steel, probably isn't necessary, but it looks better, and that's what everybody does. So basically, what I've got is a forge here that's a fire pot from an old Buffalo forge. You folks can come on up, you don't have to stand way back. I'll tell you when to duck and...
He's got flow.
This forge I'm using soft coal, bituminous coal from Pennsylvania. We want to try to find a seam of coal that's clean because there's a lot of impurities in it. And this is what you're seeing burning off around the outside.
Thank you.
What I'm doing is, this is green coal.
Good.
Okay? And I don't want to put the green coal directly on the fire because it will smoke like that and you won't even be able to see it here, okay? So what we do is you'll see me keep raking this up from the outside to the inside, and what I've got inside is what we call coke, okay? This material here, it has all the impurities, or most of them, burnt off, and the BTU level, that gives you the most BTUs of the fuel that we have. So what we're going to do is start with a piece of round rod that's, I don't know, 3/16 maybe. I'm going to use about an 8-inch length. And what I've done is I'm going to use a cut-off Hardy and put it in my anvil, and that's a Hardy hole. So there's all kinds of tools that we can make for the Hardy hole to facilitate different operations. And what I've done is marked off, and when I put a mark on this with a pencil or anything, once it gets hot, I can't see it. It basically goes away. So what I did is just put a little nick in there so I can run it back and forth and hopefully catch it there and then go from there. So that's what we'll do. So we'll take what we call our first heat, get that hot, get it cut off. And the process is just going to be, I'm going to make a staple out of this thing, okay? Just bend it in a U shape, trying desperately to get those two ends at the same level. I don't want one down and one up. So you guys got to take notes and lessons, because after I do one, somebody else in here is going to do one.
All right, Andrew.
So whoever wants to get their hands dirty and give this a try, you're welcome to it.
How did you get started in this, Marty?
I don't really know. I started shoeing horses,
Okay.
Well, we can't wait to hear that story.
and because I'm from Tupper Lake originally, so I didn't even, well, I did know what a horse looked like because my grandfather and my uncle were loggers, so they used horses in the woods. That was back, well, in the 60s, and they would hire French Canadians to be their cutters, because these guys were nuts. I mean, they could cut wood. I don't know what it was, but they could cut wood. And each crew, or each guy that was back cutting, had a horse. And most of it that I remember was pulpwood. Okay, so they were selling pulpwood. So what they would do is, you know, if you got your cutter, French guy back in the woods, cut falling trees, limbing, whatever, bringing them out into log lengths to the landing. Well, it's pretty cool because the horse they would let the horse go.
Yeah.
They bring the horse back, hook him, and send him on his way. And they pretty much knew how long it took for the horse to make the round trip, because occasionally the horse would find a little bit of nice green grass or something, and he'd just say, I'm going to take a break, you know. And he literally would, you know, they'd stop, so they'd have to go find the horse and get him back to where you're going. But so, you know, obviously on the weekends the horses still needed to be tended to, so we would go in the woods on the weekend and feed the horses and work that way. But anyways, they would have, so what I'm going to do is just try to eyeball the center of this.
So what color do you call that right now, Marty?
Hot. This is probably 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This forge welding temperature for this steel is probably around 22 to 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can burn metal or steel with this. So you have to be careful when it comes to welding that you don't burn the steel. So I'm just using the horn of the anvil to get the shape I need. And I haven't done this in a couple of years, so it would have been nice if I had practiced. I was kind of hoping that nobody would show up, and then I wouldn't have to worry about anything, right?
I think it's 23 or 24.
What's that?
I think it's 23 or 24 people there.
That's great. Okay, so basically I've just bent this in a U shape, tried to get the two tops fairly even, okay? So the next step is going to be something called a scarf. I'm going to prepare these two ends to be folded in so we can weld them together. And what a scarf is I'm just going to thin these two areas down so that there isn't quite as much material there, so they'll blend better.
Are we making a chain link or not a staple? We're making a chain link or?
Chain link.
Okay, not a staple.
Well,
But you made a
unless
staple
it
shape.
unless it doesn't work, and then I'll think of something real quick to tell you what it is. But the nice thing about blacksmithing is the ability to make your own tools. This is a hammer that I made a long time ago, make most of my tongs, certainly chisels, punches, all of those things, which would have been typically done. And back to the wood story is they were still using wooden forges in the logging camps. We see pictures of them, and they had wooden forges up in St. Regis, all up in that area. And basically, they would just make a box out of lumber, put a bottom in it, and fill it full of dirt, okay? Clay preferably, if something's a little heavier, so that once it's baked in, well, it's a nice vessel that holds holds a fire, make a fire pot.
Just a question about the setup you're using there.
Yep.
Now that's like a turbine blower, right, that's blowing air directly under the fire?
Yep,
And
This-
what, it's just a natural draft, right?
natural draft, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a smoke shelf in here, like in a fireplace. But there's no, the first time I saw this design of a hood, because usually, like, you see, you know, they just got a hood over the thing
Yeah.
and the smoke just goes around, nothing goes up the draft. And this is a side, what they call a side draft forge hood. And, see that sparkling? That's burning up.
How big is the temperature difference between the welding temperature you said and the burning temperature?
Not a lot. That's why you've got, you know, when you do that, it's, there's not, you gotta pay attention. When I try to do the weld, I won't be talking, because it's a very, very close window.
You use a flux when you weld it?
I do. I use borax usually for flux. This 20 mule team borax that was used, borax was being mined very early on.
Is that anhydrous borax?
Well, that's the better part. That's the better one if you can find the anhydrous borax.
See, it's on your shopping list up on the board there.
Yep,
You're still at the bottom of the hill.
right.
I never heard that.
Okay, so I'm just using the cross beam of the hammer just to draw these two edges out. So I've kind of created on both sides, one on one side and one on the other side. Now the next step would be to turn these points in and get them ready to weld up. Chain makers were a lot of shops, a lot of chain making, and especially the big chains for the ships, things like that. It was pretty incredible. It was all done by hand, just bigger equipment, more men. I've seen pictures where there was two handles on a big hammer, on a sledgehammer. Have you ever seen that? Instead of just, yeah, well, they'd have a big hammer that was, I don't know how big around, like yay big around, and there was a handle coming off. So they had two men striking with a hammer like that.
West Point there, they had a chain there.
Yeah, West Point's, I mean, that's a famous,
48 pounds for the length,
yeah.
and all the way across the Hudson River.
What's the end of your anvil called?
This is called the horn.
Bring it in 2 ends and close them up.
Okay, so I've got this
Make it a chain link.
oriented pretty much the way I want. I've got it closed up with a gap there. Now we're gonna flux it, put it back in the fire. Let me talk a little bit of why we're using flux. As this cools, you can see this scale forming, and you see it all over the place. That will cause your weld not to weld. You get that flux in there, and it's it just won't stick. So what the flux is doing is it'll liquefy the scale, and when we hammer it, that's why, like, we've all seen pictures when blacksmith hammers something at a welding temperature and there's sparks all over. That's basically what you're doing, is you're forcing that liquid scale out of the weld. And hopefully it works. I just noticed I've got the scarves going the wrong way on this, but we'll see if it works.
Put it at the other end of the chain.
This could be a lovely party gift. So when I weld, what I want to do is, I want to get the temperature, the welding temperature, throughout the whole piece on both sides. Okay, pretty much like cooking in the oven. You know, the outside can be burnt and the inside raw. Well, the same kind of thing. You've got to get that welding temperature through the whole piece that you're going to try to weld. So normally I probably wouldn't use a brush because it's really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. By the time you get things brushed off, it's starting to scale again. So it's just borax, right from the grocery store. And I'll just close that up a little bit. Now I'm going to go in and bring it to a welding temperature, bring it out and hit it. So this shouldn't spray a lot because I'm not hitting it very hard at this point. Usually if you're welding something big, that, you know, if you're really hammering on it.
And for the sake of the quiz later, how much, what is the temperature of the welding, 1500?
No, 1500 to 1700 is a normal forging temperature. We're going to be up to 2100.
All right, Gary just guessed 22, but
That wasn't a guess, he said it before.
21, 21, 22.
I was paying attention.
Oh, you're paying. Well, it's been a long time since I apprenticed, so I forgot that figure. But
How do you tell
So
them
what I'm
it's
doing,
22?
yeah, that's a good question. What I'm doing is to, trying to look at the color, but also the surface of the chain, of the link. I want to see it kind of get glossy, okay, and be liquidy, like running. You can also see that difference in color right there. That's also kind of an indication that we're getting close to where we want to be. We don't want to see a lot of sparks coming off of it.
looks like you've done that before, sir.
Well, I'm waiting for somebody else to do it now.
Come on, Levi. Buddy, you're good. Said you can do it.
Oh, well, tell me it's raining. We need it.
Yeah, we need more rain, that's right.
The river's a little low right now.
That's what's Chris.
Why did you flush it again?
Because I didn't do a very good job of welding it. I'm going to take another welding heat here and try to, I had one side that looked good, the other side wasn't really great.
So does the borax become like a liquid or something so it can work into the cracks more?
It does, it migrates in.
Do you do much welding in your work here? Tanks or electric or?
Both.
Here's that old welder right here, Mike Griffith. I didn't mean old good. I didn't mean.
Okay, so that's basically it. And that little point
Yeah.
is very common. You'll see that on hand forged welded chain. I can go back in there and I can, you know, blend that, but
There's really no need.
there was time. It was an issue of get the job done. Never mind, I mean, this is a chain. It isn't something that we're gonna hang on the wall and, you know, do all that stuff to. So who wants to go next? We'll cool this down, I'll clean it up, and then we'll see what we get. Another thing is, a lot of times you'll see people quenching stuff, you know, and it's nice and dramatic.
Yeah, that's dramatic.
Don't do that, okay? This has got enough carbon in it that it can crack, okay? When you quench it in water like that, it will make it even a little bit harder. And you want chain to be flexible, well, you want everything to kind of be flexible, not to break on you. So, air cooling, you know, just throw it on the floor, throw it aside, let it cool naturally. That will anneal it, so it'll make it back to its more normal temperature.
Right, so now you got 10 of those made,
Right,
and now you want to connect them.
right.
How do you connect them?
Traditionally, what would have been done is you'd make groups of three. So I've got a link there, I've got a link here. Now the next one, I would put those two together, throw those aside, make another three, throw those aside, make a link, join the three and the three, and you do the same thing as before. I put that together like that while there's still an opening, just like the repair links that you find today, where there's an opening and you hammer them shut. So you leave that opening, you put three on one side, three on the other side, and go back in the fire, come out and join them together.
Clever.
Come on, Ron, you gonna
Clever
go?
plugs.
You look like you're just
Alright,
waiting to get in trouble here.
Yeah.
Now listen, you know the rule. You
Yep.
never make me look bad.
Yeah.
So here's a notch.
Oh, you got a notch already?
what do you call that tool there, Ron? What is that tool?
Something there? Something you don't want to lay your finger
Your
on.
general part?
Well, and another thing is see the face of my hammer?
Yep.
See how there's relatively little marks on there?
Don't.
What you don't want to do is cut all the way through that and hit this face on that face, because, oh, that gets me very upset. So there's a way to do that is when you're almost through, I usually go around.
Oh, you're gonna cut a piece off right now then?
No, you're gonna
You're
cut
gonna
this.
Well, yeah, we're not using the whole thing.
No.
Shaping it.
Yeah. All right, so there you go. Just get it kind of where you want it in there. Rake these poles up,
Okay.
give it some heat.
So you might quench like just the cutting edges and faces like that, a little to make it
Well,
harder, depending on what you want to do.
We would use, and what was traditionally done, especially with wrought iron, is you would weld a steel onto the iron.
Ah,
So the steel would give you something that you could harden and temper. So like axes, edge tools, chisels.
well, like the Hardy hammer, would you have done that with that?
This hammer?
The Hardy,
Yes, yeah.
where it's the cutting
Right.
edge? So you
Because-
welded a piece of steel,
Steel was very expensive,
right?
and we tend to be fighting wars with England and those places, and they have all the resources, especially 18th century stuff. So the best steel of the day in the 1800s was coming out of Sheffield, England. Okay, we were
keep an eye on that Navy
making
guy?
it here.
You keep an eye on that Navy guy there?
Get your cameras out, folks. And remember to turn that crank.
Crank a little fire on there, Ron. You Navy guys.
Pour the coal to it.
You
So you
don't
got
think
all-
they had blacksmiths on ships?
I bet they did.
You get all those terms now. Pour the coal to it.
Yeah, that's a Navy term.
Did they
Pour
all
the
have,
coal to it.
did they all have apprentices?
There's supposed to be a kid over here turning this?
Well, there's one right there. No, girls right there. Looks like they need an introduction to blacksmithing. Absolutely. Look over there. Big, big one.
That way they'll be ready to do it at home when I get one
those blowers.
Looking nice, Ron.
Yep, you're getting there.
Pull it out every once in a while, make sure you're not, yeah, there you go. That's good. Now if you can find.
I'm
your-
like you, I can't find the notch.
I know, that's what happens to us, we can't see. Actually, as it cools down, it'll register it.
That's proceeded.
It's on the top side, isn't it?
Goes way back. Heat that a little more.
Well, you got, while you got it there,
Beautiful.
make an indentation so you can register. Hit it.
I love it. I heard that before.
You scared him off with the hammer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now put it back in. Now you know where you got to heat. Get out everybody.
These blocks here,
Sponge blocks, yes.
you use those for like making the rod initially?
Shaping, basically, this one has recesses for ladles, spoons, bowls, things like that. Different things that you're making. You may need a half round with a flat top, so you can sink it in here. Or use it for support if you're trying to weld something.
Right, to keep the shape, I
Keeps
guess.
the shape, yep, and so it doesn't kind of, like if you're hitting here, it kind of pukes out all
Yeah.
over if you just leave it out in the air.
Yep,
So this way it captures it.
yeah,
so
sort of like
it's-
the tubing benders, keep
Yep.
the
Right,
stuff from kinking when you.
right.
Heat it a little more.
No, you're good, cut it off.
Cut it off there.
Yeah. We're paying you by the hour, man.
Yeah, that's why I take your time.
You're not gonna hurt it, you're
you
gonna
get-
go through it.
Get a
There
good
you
notch going. You get
There you
the-
go, there you go, there you go, there you go. Now be careful.
How do you flex this? Oh, look at that. All right. Oh, what? Don't touch that hot spot.
Pick that up. Where is it? Dave, get over here and pick this up.
I will with the right tongs.
No, you don't get to use
I don't
tongs.
get to use tongs for that. You're a tough man, baby.
Okay. Can you just snap that off now?
Nay.
Okay, let's just wiggle asunder.
All right. We almost have. Hey, victory!
Here, you can use that piece or this piece.
They're both about 8 inches long. aren't they?
They're both supposedly.
Pretty close, pretty close.
Now you're gonna try to heat in the middle, form that U shape. There you go, Tim.
No, you're great, you're perfect. Where you were. I got him and then we can hear you.
Now while you're,
Right in the middle of the poles, basically.
Yeah, you don't want to stick it down, you don't want to stick it up, you just basically lay it across. So what you want is that coat underneath and on top of the object you're heating. If you stick it too far down, you're getting that air blast coming in, and it's just scaling more. That's what oxygen causes it to scale, and we don't want that.
Now you gotta find the middle here, right?
Well, yeah, open your other eye.
Yeah.
It's all right, don't worry about it.
we love you because you volunteered yourself. didn't you?
Yeah. Remember, you may have to save my butt the next time.
Okay.
So you said you're building the blacksmith shop? There you go. You got your resident smith right there.
Yeah,
Who's building one?
and it's right next door to the gas station where I usually spend my time anyway.
While he's doing that, turning his crank there, how about tell us a little bit about the usefulness of blacksmiths and all them forces they had back in the Civil War and before?
Well, certainly, and you guys can tell me that better.
My horse runs barefoot.
Probably, would they have had, I would imagine, now I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that they'd have both blacksmiths and farriers.
Where they could be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at that time,
Catholic.
there was a real, they started specializing. They were specializing in, the Revolutionary time, but only in the large cities, like Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, those places. You would find farriers and blacksmiths, and then locksmiths, whitesmiths, people, there was a big enough population and need that they would become specialized. But in the Civil War, I've got to believe that there would be, and not to say that a blacksmith wouldn't shoe horses, but I've got to believe that there'd be kind of a contingent of farriers as well as, blacksmiths. Probably more farriers than blacksmiths.
Maybe the blacksmiths would make blanks for them or something to.
Could well have. And I think, because it wasn't really late until later, in about the 1880s, that they developed machines to bend the shoes, things. So they were still, making horseshoes from scratch.
Well, I'm sure they carried the shoes that fit their particular mount with them because the saddlebags had a pouch that was the right size for shoes.
Right. Well, you would have, there again, anytime you were any encampment, the cook's cooking, the farriers are making shoes, the blacksmiths doing the repair work and all that sort of thing. So they had work to do continually, and if there wasn't anything to do, I'm sure they would be making shoes or making, hame hooks or whatever, just for future needs, so that there wasn't an inventory of certain stock on hand, so that if there was a breakdown, it would be minimal time lost in the field. And, what's that famous saying,
For the want of a
shoe.
Shoe nail, the kingdom.
Yeah, war was lost, or kingdom was lost, yeah.
So I'm gonna mention a name that might make my wife's eyes get misty a little bit, but I'm gonna risk it. Because when you were doing the draft horse club and you had the big horses like Clancy,
Yeah,
did you do your own farrier work?
I did, yeah, that's how I started.
Mhm.
And then I shot horses in Canada, gaited horses. And then I really was intrigued by the fire and all that stuff. And, herniated disc later and old age and fat belly and stuff that you couldn't bend over as well anymore. So I said, well, let's get the shop going. And I just gravitated to that. And that's what kind of gravitated me toward interest in tinware, is that after lugging all this stuff around to different events and whatnot, it's like, wow, there's gotta be something lighter to carry around than this stuff, 200-pound anvil and this, that, the other thing. So, started getting interested in tinware and going from there. And the thing of it is, too, is Ron's using tongs that are pretty much made to pick that round stock up, both on the end and in the middle. And that's another thing why you see, so many tongs and things like that, is it's hard enough doing the work, but if you're fighting with tools, you just can't get the quality of work that you need to do and stuff like that.
Just curious, how would you make a perfect ball out of iron?
A ball?
Yeah, like a cannonball.
This might go back to a discussion we've had about the shop towers and things like that.
Well, cannonballs primarily weren't they cast?
Yeah, they were cast.
So, to make a ball, I guess what I would think initially is you'd want to make two halves and then join them in the middle, seam them with, and you couldn't really forge something like that, because it's gonna just collapse on itself. So I think that's probably where lighter things, brazing, things like that, they would actually do brazing in the fire to join things. So if it was just for a decorative or a finial or something like that, nope, throw your scarf. Okay, what you wanna do, Ron, is thin one side out. You got a hold of this? Okay, just drawing yourself. like this.
Oh, yeah, so two flat
And then,
sides will come
okay,
together.
and then turn around and do the same thing on that side. You're gonna need more.
This is gonna be the weak point of the chain.
Take another heat. Two things that will make a blacksmith go to hell,
Yeah.
right? You know what they are? Not charging enough and hitting coal iron.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two things that will make a blacksmith go to hell.
You know what I think of? Where were we up in Newfoundland where we watched the blacksmith? Was in that? What was it? Yeah, the village there where it was a sea town. There. Blacksmith.
Okay, you're hot. See those sparks coming out there?
You're hot, Ron.
Yeah.
Your wife know that? Yes, you know that. That's why she married you, man. You're a good man, sailor.
See what he's doing? He's trying to figure out where he was.
Yeah.
He's
I'm
lost.
not sure.
And, you know, that old adage, strike while the iron's hot. The more you look at it, the cooler it's gonna get.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
So-
Should he hit it harder? Is that how it works? Hit it harder!
So what you do, it's like talking to someone that doesn't understand English. You know, you just try to speak louder and louder, like they're gonna somehow get it, you know? So the thing of it is when you go back into the fire, you need to know what your next move is gonna be, okay? And orient your material in the fire
Okay.
where you want it, you know, when you come out, you're right there, you gotta think about it, because when you think about it, you're losing, especially when
Cooling
you're
off,
welding,
yeah.
yeah, you're cooling it off quite a bit.
So do you leave your tongs in there like that, or I'm just
You
curious?
can, but,
You might make your tongs a little pop.
well,
You want long because it's getting warm, let
Yeah.
me tell you. Leave them in there long. What do you think? We ought to try?
that's great.
Bring
I
her
think
around.
you ought to just bring it around, beautiful, that's it. Nice, a little bit more, maybe. Good, now do the other one. Perfect,
You're getting it, man.
he's
We're
there.
getting there. We're getting
He's there. And don't worry about if you've lost that shape in the back, we can.
Oh,
correct-
yeah.
We can correct that.
Yeah. So you think that's
You
far
said
enough
that-
Oh,
right there?
that's beautiful.
Maybe you want to heater a little more
I
than...
sprinkle some flux on there and go in for the sparkler time and hit it.
I think you said that to me a few times that summer, apprentice. You said, we can fix that. We'll
Yeah,
fix
that's
that.
right. Well, that's the mark of a good craftsman. It's
You
not,
adjust as you go.
it's to be able to fix your mistakes.
It's
Yeah.
like a carpenter.
That's right.
Damn poor carpenter can't fix his mistakes.
That's
Cut 'em
right.
off.
That's the whole thing. You know, the mark of a good tradesman is being able to
Not unless you got a wood
recovery,
stretcher.
recovery is the clue. Well, you know about carpenters, right? Paper and paint makes a carpenter what he ain't.
Putty does real well too. Putty.
That's it. You can stretch this a lot easier than you can wood. Wood doesn't want to stretch.
Okay, now, you know where your hammer is? So when you come out, you're gonna just grab your hammer and just give it a good slap and then turn it over.
Okay.
And on both sides on that scarf.
A little bit off topic, Snye, but back then in the day, there was a project that you were interested in doing, which was making a musket or a rifle from scratch.
Not hot enough, not hot enough.
Not hot enough yet?
Did you proceed on that project at all yet, or
I'm working on, I really want to do it
from scratch?
from scratch.
You got a boring
Ford?
tool over the museum.
Do you?
You got a boring
That'd be
tool?
awesome.
You got 2 or 3 different size
Yeah.
lands you can put down there.
Yeah.
It's on the wood frame.
Right. Where'd that come from?
Bombay.
Wow.
Bombay Rifle Works?
No,
No.
no, no.
George Bombay.
And don't look at it. When you commit, commit.
Just go.
Go for it.
Unless he tells you to stop and put it back in.
Unless I tell you that it's not hot enough.
We need volunteers.
Just pull it back to you a little bit. Okay, I think you're good.
Let's
Move,
Yeah.
move,
Go, go,
move,
go, go,
don't look
go,
at it.
Danny, let's go, Danny!
There you go.
You feel anything in your legs?
There you go. Hit it.
Hit it. Well
All right,
done,
now
thing.
let's do it all over again because you got the idea. This time don't look at it.
Put a little more flux on
Yeah,
it.
oh yeah, flux is always good. A little flux is good, lots more is better.
Now, what makes the borax work and what is borax?
Because, well, borax is, it's an element, it's mine, they're boring it. You see it in the stores for laundry detergent and stuff like that. What it does is it liquefies that scale, so it melts at a lower temperature, and through capillary action, it goes into the well, into that seam, and liquefies easy now, easy big guy.
Got her there? Oh,
Yeah, don't look
Go,
at it.
go, go, go!
here.
Hit it, hit it!
There you go.
I need a bigger hand.
Okay, now-
Good, good
Now try to
job.
straighten it up. Hit it on the side. Make it into a link
Yeah, you
instead of
talk-
ground.
you're
No,
talking, man.
Put it right on the face of the animal. Turn it up on it. There you go. Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful.
Woo!
Hit it right there.
Right there. Don't touch your finger.
Okay. Yeah. When I nod my head.
Hit it.
Nice. I think you got it.
Yes. Need a little more work on the point there, but.
Well, if you want to take one more heat and just put it on the horn and make it curvy.
Okay.
But, you know, you gotta get over this whole aspect of like, wow. It's hard.
Oh, that was strike one. The iron is hot. We just heard that first.
Okay, now you don't need it as hot as it was there, that's good. Now you can massage it. Yeah, he's looking at it again.
He's looking at it.
Yeah, I wanna see which way I wanna go here, but.
Okay. See, you're supposed to do that before you put it in the fire.
Yeah, and I don't see how I'm gonna get it.
I think it was pretty good.
I think it's awesome.
I couldn't have done any better. You're all right, baby.
Yeah.
Let me see. Beautiful. That is awesome.
Well, now we're gonna see the master's touch, though. I know.
No, I just
Lengthen.
Looks good.
Yeah.
tweaking a little bit. No, that's great.
So now we know how to identify hand
Now,
forged
here,
links.
just put that in your pocket and bring it home. Okay, we're gonna lay this aside.
Tip that we made.
You're gonna let it cool before you bring it home with you. Now we'll go over on
No,
the other
we'll
side
leave
and
it
talk
here.
about tin a little bit. If you guys have got time.
Okay.
All right. On to the next.
I'm gonna figure the battery's gonna hold on this.
Ready to bring the plug and everything?
I'm gonna take it off the thing here. Just give me a second. Unplug me from the, oh, right
Right here?
right here. Okay, just kind of get it out so no one will step on it. Damn it.
introduce it. You've been gracious enough to say, fine, go ahead and do it. I just you gotta get to it and do it. That's the next big obstacle. But basically, again, as far as tooling goes, I enjoy this piece, and that stop shear over there. That shear was dragged out of a field. They bent the bottom blade, I put it in the forge and re-straightened it and had the blade sharpened. Now it works beautifully. This circle cutter looked as though somebody had painted it industrial gray paint with a bloom. It's just terrible. Nothing moved on it. It just didn't work at all. Froze up. I cleaned it up, dismantled it, cleaned it all up, put these cutters, because again, we're talking about steel. Those are extremely hard. You cannot touch them with a file. So I put them on the lathe and spun them on the lathe and sharpened them. Anybody knows where there's a tool post grinder for sale? I'm looking for one. But what I did is I set up a hand grinder with a new disc and zip tied it to my tool post, and it worked. It was fine. So this, and then the rolls on this they're still marked up, but not bad. It would be better if they were all like this, but anyways, the corrosion. But I enjoy taking these old tools that nobody really knows what they are a lot of times, cleaning them up, getting them back into action, and learning how to use them, okay? Civil War period of time, you would see these types of machines in the shops, okay? This was a time period where these machines were being developed, or had been developed. I've got some pretty interesting bios on a lot of this stuff as far as dates, history of it, and so on and so forth, if somebody's interested in that. But what we have here are 3 different types of machines for 3 different processes. The one next to Ron is called a wiring machine, okay? This one is a burring machine, and this one is just a round turning machine, okay? So they all have different functions. These are stakes. There are names for all of them. This is a hatchet stake, a creasing stake, and just a flat stake here. We've got blowhorn stakes, we've got needle stakes, we've got all kinds of stakes. Prior to mid-1800s, everything was done by hand on the stakes, okay? So you'd have your patterns developed, and then any folding, wiring, anything like that was all done over the stake, all right? After that, the advent of the tools, of the mechanized tools, because of, again, the war effort, population, the need and stuff, tin really, that was the era of tin work. I mean, it was ubiquitous. It was all over the place. Used both militarily and for the consumer, for farmers, for containers, for everything. So there was, you develop patterns for whatever object you're trying to make. So this little gizmo here, a very simple little, you guys must, everybody must in here must have seen one of these hanging on the wall. Okay?
Soap dish?
No, stick matches.
Stick matches.
Every stove, I can remember as a kid, my grandparents going into grandma's house, and by the wood cook stove, they have one of these with their stick matches in it, and you got a striker right there and stuff. Pretty cool, man, you know, why wouldn't you use this anymore, you know? So, to take something like this and develop a pattern, this is what the pattern looks like. And I've got to transfer it to tin and get it laid out. But everything is done in the flat. Like Ron, I mean, you old draftsmen and stuff like that. I can remember taking mechanical drawing in high school and doing all this layout stuff, and then cutting it out and, you know, making it. It's like,
I gotta
wow,
tell you,
cool.
My first year started teaching in '70, and with the 8th graders, I did quite a bit of metal work. And this was my favorite. That's
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yeah.
And the tin work. I like that.
Yeah, well, and my weakness is doing patterns. I mean, I really gotta get better making up patterns and so on and so forth. Pretty much anything that we see, obviously tin being soft and flat, by putting wire in it, by putting seams in it, all of these things add to the rigidity of the material. So this, for instance, it could be the start of a cup, okay? Has no bottom. So we need to find the diameter of here, cut it either by hand or with a circle cutter, and then we have to put a burr on it, okay? Because the burr, we can't just butt something against here and solder it. It just isn't strong enough, okay? So we would take a circle and raise up an edge just slightly so that it would flip over the cup. This, I'm sure, doesn't go to this. This is just something I picked off the bench. But that's basically how it would go, fit on that. And then your seam would be soldered down.
So is that the name of the edge on a folded piece like that?
Yep. Well, that particular, there's different edges. You can just fold it over and hammer it down. That's a folded safety edge. Okay, so like that, where the two edges were just folded over and hammered down. That's a folded safety edge. Just again, so you're not cutting your fingers off and doing things like that. So on a cup or in a drinking vessel, we put a wire in the top here for strength, but also so you're not tearing your mouth up every time you take a drink out of this, okay? So, again, in the Civil War era, it was pretty nice because we could take whatever material, especially if it's flat, to put a piece of wire in it. That was very easy. Okay, first of all, what we got to do is fold it over and get ready. And I'm going to use this machine here as a bar folder, so I can just set that in there, you said. And bring this over. You know where this was used?
Roofing?
The Ogdensburg Journal.
Oh.
And they did that when they put the type onto the, how they put it in the, whatever you call it, the press, yeah. And they clipped that little edge. So what we've done is created just that little edge. Now, we'll get a piece of wire, which I should have had already. And we can insert the wire in it, run it through the wiring machine, and it will crimp that, hopefully, crimp that over and have a nice I usually just try to capture it by starting to fold. And we'll come over here again. They have to be set up. Crank this down. And pop it out. Here, Ron, you do this next time.
Yeah.
We'll do it on the other edge.
That's because they're trying to show us how easy it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your cutter back there. The one I had in school when I started was like that. Great big piece of plexiglass so you couldn't get your fingers under it.
Yeah.
Then we had an electric one that had a button on each end so your hands were out here. But the best idea was get a kid on each end, right, to run a button, and then you had a free hand to stick in there.
Isn't it amazing how, if you want to, OSHA should hire kids
Yeah.
to find the bugs in
Right.
their designs and stuff, right?
3-year-olds with child who lived off in 30 seconds.
So then basically this is gonna try to set this down. And this is the only machine that actually goes backwards. Okay, let's see what I'm doing here, Ron.
There you go.
Okay, I made that look a lot harder than it needed to be. But basically, you've got a nice clean, and this is nice and tight on the other side. Now we're gonna do it, Ron's gonna do it by hand, because he knows what he's doing. And he's gonna come over here, and first of all, he's gonna use the hatchet stake to form that thing that the bar folder did.
How far over should you put
I'd
it?
go all the way. Well, yeah, here, I'll cheat a little bit. That was
Oh yeah,
about
give me a
depth.
reference there.
So this is a lot of this work is patterns and then making sure that it's gonna fit where it needs to fit afterwards. So here we had mid-1800s, and this is before that. So a lot more, you know, when you got everything set up and you've done it a million times, you can do it very quickly. When you know, you're doing it by hand, that's good, beautiful job. Man,
Piece
man,
left over something?
what are you doing next
Here,
week?
cut it off here.
What are you doing next week anyways?
Yeah.
So what did they do with all their equipment at school? Is it still, are they still doing it, or are they gonna get rid of it all?
Most of it's gone, I'd say. Who knows where it went to. One of
We'll
those.
use a creasing stake with pliers there. And I'm gonna just talk about this.
This one here, you mean? Put it right here.
Yeah, second one I think is good. This
Okay.
one here is good. This hatchet stake, I should be talking about this with Carl. He's a major collector, and he usually scarfs this stuff up before I get my hands on it. But this is a Mark tool, and most of the better stakes by the big makers were marked. This one is J. Wilcox, and it was made in Connecticut. And we know that J. Wilcox, under that logo, under that stamp, I've got the chronology of all these manufacturers and when they were in production. So J stood for Joshua, so it was Joshua Wilcox, and he was in Greenwich, Connecticut. And the time period that he had that stamp was 1838 to 1849. So we can date that tool to that period of time. These other tools, this is kind of one of my pride and joys. This is a creasing tool. It's the same one, kind of is doing the similar work that Ron's doing on that. This one, they're usually marked on the stem.
Nice.
I shouldn't tell you this.
No, I've never,
Now you're gonna want double for anything you find from it. It's like-
I've never seen any of this stuff before.
So this one is J and E North, Berlin, Connecticut. Okay, now the North brothers,
Famous North family, yeah. They sons of Simeon North?
I don't know.
Major fine flintlock pistols. Occasional musket.
Paperwork here, man. Okay, so J&E North, okay, Berlin, Connecticut, they were in business from 1824 to 1854. I'm sorry,
Years.
1824
Yeah.
to 1854. And then it changed from J&E North, or just J North, that's the start of the business, was Jedediah North. So if you find something marked just J North, that's the earliest one, J North.
It isn't worth as much, right?
That's right. If Carl's got it, we just won't even talk about it. He started business in 1810 to 1824 in Berlin, Connecticut. So then apparently his brother Edmund joined Jedediah in 1824, and then Edmund, apparently Jedediah must have died, because then the company progressed just to E North, 1855 to 1856. So by knowing these things, we can date at least a very close period of time when these tools were made. And I think that's awesome. And that's a problem we have with blacksmith stuff. Very, very difficult to find a touch mark on it.
Well, a lot of the blacksmith stuff was homemade, handmade to start with, so it isn't gonna.
So these, you're welcome to take a look at this if you need copies of it for your own information, but there's a whole list of the big makers. And then getting back over to Pexto Wilcox, which is the common stuff we see. They started out as, the first one started out just as Seth Peck was the starter of that whole outfit, 1816 to 1832. Then it became Seth Peck and Company, 1833 to 1843. Peck Smith and Company, 1840s. And then again, in that description, it showed how these companies like Seth Peck and Wilcox, they were competing during the Civil War, and they were basically driven together because they were just running each other out of business. One would have the government contract for this stuff, making big bucks, and the other one starving. So the only way that they could, keep in business is they negotiated. And then it became Peck, Stowe, and Wilcox in 1870. So this is a Canadian machine, but this is a Peck, Stowe, Wilcox. This one is a Peck, Stowe, Wilcox. And this is a new Peck, Stowe, and Wilcox. And you can see the label is more modern than this old one. So I would imagine that this is probably 1870s. This is like one of the first Peck, Stowe, and Wilcox. But then the modern stuff, it's all got Peck, Stowe and stuff, and that's all really quite modern after the 1900s.
Cast right into the.
Right, into the bodies.
Just a question there. There's a lot of cast parts
Yep.
on this stuff.
Yep.
Now, would there have been people doing casting, moving with the troops and stuff, like in the
No.
war situation? That would have been in a centralized
Right.
location and shipped
Right.
out
Yeah.
as parts.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have old blacksmith carriage makers journals from the 1800s. 1880s, I think, is the first one, or 1870, I think is the first issue that I've got. And then you were seeing all kinds of specializations. You could buy springs from one company, the boxes from another company and stuff. So especially in the carriage making industry, you'll see, it was made in Hubleton, New York. Well, it was assembled in Hubleton, New York. The parts were made from all over the place, And, you know, a blacksmith or small shop in the wintertime, we'll make up a couple of these, a couple of that and sell them. So a lot of that was happening. And these guys were getting components from foundries. I mean, they were casting long before that. No, that.
So people aren't
casting-
doing small scale casting and,
They might be. I mean, it depends, I guess, what you say small scale, but I would think that these were probably made in a major foundry.
right. And these tools, from the earlier period, but those have been primarily, forged?
Yes, absolutely. You can
So
see
they're
how
basically wrought iron and then probably with the steel welded
this
on
is a
the
steel
working
plate,
edge
right. This
again.
This would be steeled here because this is extremely hard
Okay.
for the wear resistance. But then this is all wrought iron.
Mhm.
I can guarantee that.
Right.
There's some of them, I've got a couple of hatchet stakes where you can see the weld marks on it, or where it's blended.
Right.
And that's all kind of cool stuff too, so that you can see how it was actually made and stuff.
Mhm.
But it's also interesting, at least to me, is that, now this is a tool by a premier maker of the time.
Right.
And you look at these seams, you can see the weld seam right there.
Yeah.
But very clean, very neat, okay? Where you get something that was maybe made in a guy's, small shop or something, and as long as it stuck and it worked, it was good enough to go,
Yeah.
But
So what did Ron
Nice.
make for us there?
Ron I told you not to show me up. So here's,
You used the machine.
yeah, I know, and you showed me up. Actually, I'll tell him that you made this one.
Yeah.
So this is the one I made with the machine, which is crude compared to what Ron did with a creasing stick, okay? But the one Ron made is done very well, and there's no overlap. It's tucked in nicely, just the way it should be. So you'd use that for hinges. You can make hinges that way. Wiring around all of this stuff, like this sheet weighter.
A sheet weighter.
This has got wire around all of it. There's no, it's held together basically by the wire. There's no, these seams are just folded over. There's no solder or anything on here to hold these together. And that's called a one-sheet weighter because it took one sheet. You were able to make it with one sheet of tin. Tin dimensionally was,
Oh, I was only
Then
half
eventually
you
was
were
what?
waiting for me, weren't you?
used to call this a
That's embarrassing.
coffin-shaped tray.
Compensate?
Coffin,
Oh, coffin, oh, sheet, okay.
where the corners notched off.
Okay, the size varied from 9.5 to 9.5 by 12 3/4. So that's the way the sheets of tin came. And from that, we were able to make a one-sheet weighter. There was 2-sheet waiters, 3-sheet waiters, depending on the size of it. So that, that was pretty cool.
They didn't have bigger sheets, or?
They didn't sell them that way. They did have, they would make them, but the way they were shipped, because this stuff wasn't available in this country until quite late in time.
Is that an
The
English
advent of the rolling mill, prior to that, what is tin? Okay, I should have started there. Tin is basically a sheet of iron that's hot dipped into a molten vat of tin, okay, to coat it. So it's
tin-plated iron.
It's tin-plated iron, okay? And now we've got the difference between hot dipped and electroplated. Very few places, it's very, very difficult to get hot dipped tin. This is a sheet of hot dipped tin. And you can see the difference people that are really focused on reproduction and stuff, you can see this is electroplate and this is hot dipped. There's a different texture to it, a different look to it. You can see the modeling on it, kind of like wavy glass and, modern glass. So this is what's available now. We still hunt around for electroplate or hot dip tin, and that way. But that wasn't, from the advent of the tin industry, just from this iron would have all been stamped out or all been hammered out, flat sheets. So, a group of people are just sitting there hammering these sheets out all day long. Then we got into,
Mechanization.
if you get a mill with some water power, so you've got a water powered trip hammer, that made life a lot easier. And then the rolling mills came in production so that they could literally roll these things out, and that's when production really started. But here's a whole list. I'm not going to read it to you, but the first recorded tin plate was made in Bavaria in 1350, so that's pretty cool. And all of this stuff was coming from that part of the world, even before France and England started their production. There's references to different dates when France was starting to try to do their own tin plate, and it failed, So it's pretty interesting, just the history of how this stuff come about.
Was that their technique was not good, or they didn't get the secret ingredients list from the Germans? Or
yeah, because they had to pickle this stuff. They had the iron, they had to get the right iron, then it had to be pickled so that it would form like an etch on it, so that it would accept the tin. And then the right, I would imagine the right recipe for the tin itself, how hot it got, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it wasn't,
So that's why we should have paid attention in science class? Yeah.
Well, I wish I had.
Me too. Paid more attention, that would have been good.
Education's wasted on the youth.
That's correct.
So that's, if anybody's got any questions or whatever, you're welcome, and I'm here, I live here, so you can't kick me out. Well, you could.
Question from the cheap seats back here.
Yep.
You also do a little bit of wheelwrighting, if I recall. So
I do. I play with that as well. Like I said, I just like the old crafts and the old trades. So we've done wheelwright work. Like to work on carriages. Like to get a little more proficient at tin work. And I guess when it boils down to it, I'm just a tool freak. I really like working or finding these old tools and recognizing what they are and what they do, and trying to get them back up into working condition and keep them moving. So that's a big part of it, and I guess. And then, with all of this, after you get the patterns, after you get everything put together and whatever, then there's this big mysterious thing called soldering. Okay? And that's one of those deceptively simple looking things that is done by a master, but then you pick up a soldering iron and try to do a good clean soldering job, and it's like frustrating as hell.
So is this thing soldered?
No.
No, these are
It's
just
just
folded over.
folded over, right?
Okay,
And the
so
only thing that holds it together is the wire.
will this hold water?
No, it wasn't meant to hold
on
water.
the serving tray, right?
It's just a serving tray, right?
I could picture my hardtack and some beef jerky on that.
There you go.
Whole gravy, maybe.
For some haggis.
The wire goes all the way around.
Right,
So
right.
but crimping it later,
Right.
that's keeping it up using.
Right.
On your lantern there, do you have a machine to punch all them holes in, or is that hand? I was just curious whether, because they
Yeah,
look
Friday we went down to, what was it, Thursday? Thursday, I don't know what day, Friday? We went down and at the Kids Day down at the Fort property or at the Lockwood Center. And I always like to try to get the kids active doing something. So they were, you know, punching holes in tin. And I don't know, you know, I mean, kids, I mean, they're just not used to using their hands, other than their two thumbs.
Yeah,
you
you
know?
gotta have the thumbs.
And it's, I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, I really don't.
When we were teaching 4-H, we used to try to get the kids to do
Yeah.
that with a nail,
Yeah.
a pattern, take down, and then punch out a design or
Right.
something
Yep.
for a project.
It's a struggle. I mean, and I'm not blaming, you know, I mean, it's just where we're at, but,
Well, they don't have access.
right,
That's
Exactly.
like the one
Yeah.
time a year why the teachers love that program
Yeah.
is that it's the one time a year they get to do hands-on things. They don't have time anymore in school.
and it's so interesting because we're close friends with most of the Amish around here. And, you know, those kids grew up like we grew up, you know, in our generation. We were out doing things and
You didn't have
building stuff. And how did I get interested in blacksmithing? The story is that when I was a kid, I wanted to build a fort, like every kid wanted to build a fort, right?
Yeah.
And I had never seen a new nail.
Oh,
You know, it's like, oh, you wanna build a fort? Yeah, there's a bucket of nails out in the garage, you can use those nails. And they're all dead and rusted. Well, I'll tell you what, you straighten a few thousand nails, and it's amazing how you can look at something and know, okay, if I hit it here, then I'm gonna get this reaction, and so on and so forth.
You pinch your fingers into that nail.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Catch
great.
right on.
I think that's you know, it's like they said in Williamsburg, when making hand-forged drop nails, you know, that's one of those things that's deceptively simple looking, that to do it well and to do it with any expediency is difficult. And Peter Ross, who was the head blacksmith at the time there, he said, listen, after the first 10,000,
yeah.
it'll start coming to you. And that's what those guys do. They will make thousands and thousands and thousands of nails, and you watch them, and they're just one heat, boom, nails done, perfect. And
It's
you
like
just,
this lady just said here, you're talking about, kids don't see this, get it?
right,
I taught for 30 years in the shop there at OFA, and I've been retired 18 years. My room is now an art room. It's only required in New York State that shop be taught in 7th or 8th grade for 10 weeks, and it can be taught by anybody. You can teach a subject out of your area, which like science teacher will take one period, math teacher will take another period, so there isn't even a shop teacher there anymore.
I had,
Everybody
it
else.
was one kid in the Hewelton School District, out of all the kids that we had there were, what were they, Marcia, 4th and 7th
Fourth and
graders?
seventh curriculum. Yeah.
So the 7th graders, now, I don't know, I've been a long time since I've been around school, so I don't know what's being done in math classes and stuff like that. So the 7th graders would come up, and I handed them this thing, and most of them thought it was a pair of shears. So once we got that squared away, I said, look, I need a 3-inch diameter circle for the bottom of this cup. So I gave him this set of dividers, and I gave him a steel rule, and I said, lay out a 3-inch circle. I want a 3-inch diameter circle. Not a clue.
Core curriculum works for me.
Yeah.
So the thing of it is, and I tell the kids, I said, you know, it's somewhat not your fault, because you're sitting there day in and day out and listen, blah, 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 blah. They can't relate to what possible application is any of this used for. You know, they don't know, you know?
Marty, one of the best presentations we've had in actual reenacting in the last few years is Grover got a bucket of square nails that were all bent, and he'd sit outside the tent, straighten the nails. He drew more crowds
Yeah.
straightening those nails than you can
Kids,
imagine.
I think kids want to get their hands dirty.